This podcast is supported by the Newman School at the Talmud Torah of St. Paul, where academic excellence and Jewish values meet, teaching analytical and critical thinking skills that are necessary to thrive in a complex world. Now enrolling grades K through 5. Learn more at ttsp.org/Newman. Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonny Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Naomi Silber, the development director of Pro-Choice Minnesota. We talk about what this week has been like since the leak of the opinion that threatens to end Roe v. Wade, how her activism and Judaism collide, and how you can support her work on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Naomi Silber, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You are the development director for Pro-Choice Minnesota. We are speaking on Wednesday afternoon, May 4th. It is less than 48 hours since the bombshell article in Politico with the leaked opinion that will effectively end pro-choice protections of Roe v. Wade. What have these last 48 hours been like for you, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, so I was in Milwaukee this past weekend. I got back to Minneapolis at around 5 p.m. on Monday. And, I was like, I'm going to do laundry. I'm going to meal prep. It's going to be a nice, relaxing evening. I went to the gym, and on my way home from the gym, I got a text with let's be clear, like 18 texts with the Politico article.
Right.
And yeah, I read through it obviously like 6 times, and I got to work. So I worked late into Monday night. I worked probably the longest day of my life yesterday on, Tuesday the 3rd. We planned a rally in a few hours that had hundreds of people come at the courthouse in downtown Minneapolis. I've never planned a rally that fast, but that's also something about our movement is that we're adaptive. We, and we had been planning for this decision or some decision to come out just later. So,
right.
I didn't expect Roe v. Wade to be overturned on a random Monday night in May.
and to be clear, it's not. Like anybody listening to this, everything I've heard everything I've heard and read on this, and I've listened to and read plenty over the last 2 days, it is not official. It is not dead yet. Abortion is still the law of the land, and certainly always has been the state of Minnesota, at least for some period of time. Yeah.
Always will be. I will go so far as to say. So Roe v. Wade is not overturned yet. This is a draft majority decision that was leaked. Mm-hmm. So it does seem that is going to be the decision. But yes, drafts can change. People can change their minds. It is possible that this is not the final decision. But yeah, I guess getting back to your question about how it's been professionally and personally, like I haven't had a chance to mourn or think about it, which is fine. I chose to work in this field and I like this field. And I know that means that I put the community above my own needs sometimes. And I wanted to be here for our members and, Minnesotans. But I personally haven't even come to terms with what has happened. I've just been working. So personally, I'm a little overtired and in a state of I'm in a trauma response, and I'm working.
And I think as long as you keep going, like I'm no therapist, I don't understand this, but I feel like logically, as long as you keep working and you keep sort of moving the work forward, then maybe that helps sort of the overall coping in a way. Because like once it stops and you have a chance to really think about it is when the adrenaline wears off, and then it really maybe sinks in for you.
Totally. And our staff is great. So I work at Pro-Choice Minnesota. Our staff is amazing. And I know that kind of as things slow down a bit, we will each make sure we can cover for each other when we need to have a little cry. And, you know, it's a really great, like, emotionally intelligent workspace. So I can definitely be like, hey, I'm starting to mourn. And someone will be like, okay, I'll take that meeting off of, you know. But yeah, I haven't gotten there yet. I have just been working, and that's okay with me. That's what the community needs.
You know, you had mentioned that you're, at least if not you personally, certainly pro-choice Minnesota, like, we can, all of us, I think, can, you know, we know the makeup of the court. If you've been paying attention at all over the course of, I mean, not even the past 6 months since the hearing, you know, since it was argued before the court, but for years, this has been sort of the thing that anti-choice activists have sort of been pointing towards this moment. So I guess, is it that it's happening now, and or how the news came out via the leak that is the more shocking point of it all to you?
Yeah. So we've been planning for this for honestly for years.
Right.
For a post-Roe America. I think as much as we were prepared for the possibility it could be a complete overturn, we were more expecting, like, them to support, like, the 15-week ban, but nothing more. Like, as much as I was prepared for that could happen, it still felt really hard to read that Roe v. Wade should be overturned. I think this could be a trauma response again. I'm fascinated by the leak. Like, this is so weird.
So am I. That to me is the, like, you know, as somebody who, again, like, I'm not like a court watcher. I don't put myself in that category, because there are far more talented journalists than I am who have made careers, and really good careers, out of paying attention to everything the Supreme Court does. But as somebody who has at least paid attention to it over the last 30 or so years, this never happens.
This never happens, especially in this detail, this early. Like, Roe v. Wade actually was leaked, but
right.
But it was it was leaked in a journal that came out weekly, so it only was leaked a few hours before the decision actually came out.
Right.
This early with this much detail is. I'm like, I can't get over it. What happened? Who did this?
Right. And I think, like, you know, interestingly, I think it wasn't leaked at the time, but it came out after the fact. I believe it was Planned Parenthood v. Casey that Justice Kennedy had been prepared to overturn Roe, at least in the preliminary vote. And then in the final iteration of the vote ended up flipping, which is what kept Roe in place since Casey.
Right. So there's definitely a chance that people will change their mind and the draft will not, you know, be the law.
Right.
I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen. And I think it is not good to assume, like, we need to be prepared for this to be final.
Right.
My concern is also that people will lose momentum. So everyone's fired up right now. We had so many people at the rally yesterday. And, like, we can't lose momentum on this. We have to be ready to keep fighting and keep working. And it's tough, right? Like, we had probably close to 100 signups for clinic escorts yesterday.
Wow.
Which is great. And it's like, okay, are you ready to clinic escort all year round?
Right.
Was this just like, wow, I should be doing something? And I hate that I'm pessimistic about that, but we need consistency. We need this momentum not to die. And it's hard to know if it will.
Is it pessimism or is it realism? Because, like, we've seen this. Like, we understand that is sort of a natural response to I don't want to liken it to, like, a disaster, like a natural disaster where a hurricane hits and people donate money to Red Cross or donate, you know, for food drives or clothing or anything like that. But it is, to a lot of people, in a lot of ways, is a disaster. And I think
it absolutely is. Yeah.
And I think the concern that it might be a short-lived thing is very natural, but, you know, maybe it's not. Maybe, you know, maybe this becomes the tipping point where it becomes the norm for people.
Yeah.
to be activist in this way.
And here's probably my first of many donation asks during this podcast, because I am the development director and that's what I do. But yeah, I mean, we've had an outpouring of support, of financial support, which is great because it's how we do this work. And they've almost all been one-time donations, which, listen, I'm not turning away any donation. Like, I love all donations, all sizes. And again, it's concerning when we see this big burst of momentum that we don't know how long it'll be sustained. Right. So really what I've been encouraging people to do is donate and make it a monthly gift. It helps us plan for the future. It helps us have, frankly, like job security and know that this will, like, we will be able to continue doing this work. Yeah, so that's, you know, it's hard to know how long this will be sustained. And we're almost entirely member funded. We get like very few grants want to fund abortion work.
Why do you think that is? As somebody who works in the space, I'm sure you've heard the reasons why, or at least, you know, whether they're legit reasons or, you know, just stuff made up to make somebody else feel better. But what do you think it is?
I honestly don't. I don't even know. I mean, partially it's that Pro-Choice Minnesota has a 501c3 and a 501c4, and that is tax code
right.
for all our listeners out there. But it means a 501c3 is like strictly charity. So that is direct work. So that's our clinic escorts, our campus organizers, and a lot of our organizing work. And 501c4 work, you can lobby more. And that's also where most of us get paid from, is the 501c4 money. And it's not as tangible, right? So you can't, like, I can't say like, we have this many clinic escorts, you know, from that pot of money, but grants usually only fund 501c3 work. So that immediately cuts out a lot of our work to request funding for. Right. And also, like, they don't want to make a public stance on abortion. They want to be able to fund, you know, from like lots of different areas. And that's usually their one. They'll fund like women's rights in this context, but often with abortion, that's just a non-starter. So yeah, we're almost entirely member funded.
Is that because, like, I understand I mean, I'm sure the signs were at the rally at the courthouse yesterday, but, you know, abortion is healthcare, right?
Yes.
Like you see that. Is that not does that argument, it's not even an argument, it's a statement of fact. It's a statement of fact as far as I'm concerned, at least. Does that not move grant funders?
It hasn't.
Okay.
It's also like, I'm busy, you know, like I have a lot of work to do, and grants take a lot of time to write.
Yes,
and
they do.
So if I'm like 75% sure we're not going to get money and I have a busy, you know, few months, like that's a really hard way to justify hours and hours of time to try and sway someone on a position they've already made. Whereas I like that we're member funded. I like that we're grassroots funded. I would rather engage with donors and members than try to change a major grant's mind.
I'm curious. There are so many, and we'll in the show notes, I'm going to link to a story that our editorial fellow Lev Gringaus wrote back in January about a lot of the Minnesota Jews that are involved in keeping abortion safe and legal in Minnesota. He talked to you for the story. I believe he led with you in that story. But he had mentioned a number of organizations. I'm not trying to pit Pro-Choice Minnesota against Planned Parenthood or Unrestrict or anything else, but I guess, can you explain for the listeners a little bit of you mentioned some of it, but sort of maybe the differentiating factors between what Pro-Choice Minnesota does and what somebody else might do?
Yeah. So our big question is, how are we different from Planned Parenthood? That's kind of the most frequent question. Okay. Planned Parenthood, and again, we're not like, we love Planned Parenthood, right? Like we all work in coalition together and we all need to exist. So yes, no pitting against each other needed or coming from me. So obviously Planned Parenthood has clinics. So that is a major difference. And their lobbying work is they represent themselves, they represent the clinics. And so that is a more expansive range of healthcare that they're representing and pushing for. Whereas we are really just abortion. Well, I mean, that's not only hard and fast. We support healthcare, we support, queer rights, et cetera, breastfeeding, but we're just kind of abortion forward. We get to be more abortion forward than a lot of other organizations that have other interests. And we also get to represent all of the independent clinics at the Capitol. So there's 3 independent clinics in Minnesota. In Duluth, the We Health Clinic, in Robbinsdale, the Robbinsdale Clinic, and in Bloomington, Whole Woman's Health, where I actually was this morning escorting. And so we advocate for them at the Capitol. We're their lobbyists, so they don't have to worry about it. They can focus on providing care. They know we've got their back. We run their clinic escort program, and we kind of just get to be like, they get to just focus on providing care to their patients, and we get to represent them.
So this is not the first time we've spoken on matters of, shall we say, activism. The first time I met you was you were running around there was an anti-ICE protest that I was covering. I know JCA had a presence there, which is part of what brought me out, and happened to meet you while you were running around helping organize and hope that people weren't hit by speeding cars as they were blocking the entrance, and almost passing out from dehydration, if I recall.
Yeah, I also had walking pneumonia.
Oh, that was right. I forgot about the walking pneumonia. Yes. And it was the end of July and 100 odd degrees. It was insane. I remember it well. It was, it was quite the experience covering it and watching, organization in action. So I am curious, given that you sort of moved from, that type of organizing to what you're doing now, what was it that led you to social justice work in the first place? Because this is to me, what you're doing now very much falls under that umbrella.
Yeah, I agree. I've always kind of done social justice. This is always such a hard question to answer. I grew up very involved in politics and social justice. My mom met the majority of her best friends at a pro-choice book club before I was born. And so that's always been normalized. I think I've almost always been taken out of school by my parents on election day to door knock. That was very normalized in my life. What's funny is this is a spicy answer. I was in a class at the U, and it was a social justice class. And I was really excited to, I'd been doing social justice since I was in high school, but I was like, wow, I'm so excited to learn about this from more of an academic perspective. This is going to be so cool. And he taught us about essentialism and the idea that you're put on this earth to do something, and asked us to write a page or two about what issue we felt we were put on this earth to do. And am I allowed to swear? Did you say yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I said, that's some Christian bullshit. And I fought with him on it. I was like, that's Protestant, that's Christianity. That's Protestantism, right, that you were put on this earth to do something. I don't think that. He was like, well, why do you do this? What do you love about it? And I was like, I don't love this. I would love to not do social justice. This is exhausting. I haven't slept. I'm happy to do it because this is work that needs to be done, and there is joy in it. And I've made amazing friends, and I've had, fun experiences, and there is joy in social justice. And do I wish that I was breeding golden retrievers on my friend's farm in central Massachusetts and didn't have to think about abortion becoming illegal? Yeah, I don't want to be doing this. I do this because it's what we should be doing to make the world better. So I don't know, that feels really deeply tied to Judaism too. It's you're not supposed to do things to get into heaven or to not get into hell. You do good things because that is what being a human being means.
Right.
And that's kind of how I view my activism, is like, yeah, it's exhausting. I'm tired, right? Like I'm running around at a protest with walking pneumonia in 100 degrees.
Right.
I would have rather been in bed, but it's what needs to be done. And I'm happy to do it. But yeah, I wasn't put on this earth to do something. I do it because I'm a human being.
And because it's how you want to, it's what's right by you. It's how you want to live your life. And you want to live your life because these are things you believe in. You believe that women should have the right to choose the destiny of their own bodies and their own lives. And that, and you want to help immigrants and.
Totally. And I really want to encourage everyone listening, encourage you to normalize using gender neutral language in the abortion conversation. Like this has traditionally been a women's issue, and that is great. And the movement has been great. And we, like, as we evolve and know more, we can change language to reflect our values more. And we know that like all genders get pregnant, all genders need abortions. You don't have to totally cut the word women out of your vocabulary, but just I think it's important that you said these are my values, and that's also a value of mine, is that we're inclusive about who's getting abortions and who's getting pregnant.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things that I was going to ask, and you sort of touched on it, was sort of how the social justice work you do is so important to your Judaism. And I guess, so what I wanted to know is, does the activism inform the Judaism, or does the Judaism inform the activism?
I don't know.
Long setup for an I don't know. Okay, that's fair.
I know. They feel so tied. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Mm-hmm. They feel so tied. It feels like a large part of my Jewish identity, and vice versa. My Judaism feels like a large part of my social justice identity. And I have like a great community of friends who have like a great Jewish community, and we all do some form of work, whether in our day jobs, or I can always count on a friend to be like, are you going to this rally? Do you want to be protest buddies? Like, I just know that my people view the world similarly to me, and have it so intrinsically tied in their own Judaism that it's so hard to separate which came first or which influences what. Which is not a great answer to a...
No, but it sort of is, though. It sort of makes sense. And you did kind of explain it earlier, when you decided to make friends with your professor in that class.
I've always been mean to teachers. I was really... This is kind of on topic. In high school, our health teacher, I was a menace because he was an idiot and he deserved to be called out. And at one point he said, if you're not ready to get pregnant, don't go into a dark room with a man, or probably a boy. We were in high school. He didn't. And I jumped out of my chair and I said, oh my God, that's how babies get made? I always thought you needed sperm to penetrate the egg. I had no idea that just by going into a dark room, you could get pregnant. This is crazy.
I'm going to assume he didn't appreciate the sarcasm.
He was really scared of me. So it was fine. This happened like almost every day that I would correct him, or I once threatened to film him.
Look, this is what happens when you have like gym teachers teaching health class.
Exactly. This is what happens when you have gym teachers teaching health. It was so bad. He was so sexist. I hope you hear this, Mr. Johnson. I'm sure you won't.
I thought that the gym teacher who was teaching health in Mean Girls was sort of the stereotype, but apparently like it was a caricature, but it's apparently that he was your teacher.
He was my teacher. He once kicked a chair over and he said, that's what happens if you don't have self-respect. And I said, I think I was like, oh, like, you view women as, first of all, you view women as objects. Second of all, you think it's okay for them to get hurt if they don't have self-respect? Like, self-respect's really hard when you're a teenage girl. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, I'm the father of two of them. It's brutal. I love my children if they listen to that. Like, they know I love them, and in the event they listen to this, I love you both. But oh my God, it is a tough world to be a teenage girl in. I think it always has been, and social media and everything has made it that much worse. That's a whole different rabbit hole to dive down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but.
No, so I think it'll come as no surprise. I think it's one of my most on-brand things that I ended up in abortion work. And I used to get into like really screaming matches with my health teacher when he would give medically inaccurate information.
And I'm sure it was all medically inaccurate.
There's nothing medically accurate. We once watched a video that was narrated by the voice of Lord Farquaad, and it was all I could focus on from Shrek. I was like, what budget? What are we doing?
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I can't even think the generations of teenagers getting just the worst possible information in school on matters that are that important.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, this actually goes to another point. Sometimes we get asked, like, why aren't we working on pregnancy prevention? Why aren't we helping people use birth control better? Why aren't we, helping prevent people from getting pregnant? To which I will say, to the question you didn't ask me.
You're doing a great job interviewing yourself. Keep going.
I just had this conversation with my grandma. First of all, other groups are doing that. Like, there are great groups working on comprehensive sex ed. And if our only goal of sex ed is to have people not get abortions or not get pregnant, like, I think we're really undervaluing sex ed. And that, like, we should be teaching about, like, consent and safety and power dynamics and safe sex and not getting pregnant. And also, even if we had the best sex ed in the world, there will always be a need for abortions. Even if every pregnancy was wanted, there will always be a need for abortions. And if we focus so much on the personal responsibility of people to not get pregnant, we just continue to stigmatize abortion, whether we are trying to or not.
Right. I mean, and that's something that I think so many in this conversation either don't understand, and I think they probably do, but just willfully don't care, is that, there are some times where an abortion is medically, not just necessary, but medically required to save the woman, or the person carrying the pregnancy. And
nice self-correction.
Thank you. I caught myself. I appreciate the education. That it is required to keep the person alive. And the fact that the idea of not allowing it to happen, because somebody's religion, I guess, is insane.
Somebody else's religion, not ours.
No, and that's, that's a key point, is that Judaism, is another piece that we'll have in the notes that Beth Gendler, then of NCJW, now of JCA, and Rabbi Avi Olitsky, then of Bethel, wrote right after I think it was the day after the arguments at the Supreme Court, wrote about how abortion is a Jewish value.
Yeah. And Rabbi Zimmerman spoke at our rally beautifully. If I can out myself, I sent her talking points, and one of them was sad, mourning. And she killed it.
Yes. Rabbi Z is amazing.
And I would also say that, like, every abortion is medically necessary. If you don't want to be pregnant, that's a medically necessary abortion.
Right.
And this might be a wanted pregnancy that becomes an unwanted pregnancy for a myriad of reasons. Your partner's abusive. You got a new job. Your body, like, you feel sick every day. And that isn't, like, a consistent way you can live your life. Like, even if we only had wanted pregnancies, we would still need abortions, both because they become unwanted or because they become medically unsafe.
Right. Right. Well, I realize this is not the most uplifting conversation. And I appreciate the passion that you bring to this, and I appreciate that I can only, I mean, can't be an easy couple of days for you. And I really appreciate your willingness to come chat with me about this. And, you know, the last bit of nonsense, completely off topic, that I want to ask you before we let you go to what I hope will be many new emails in your inbox of donations. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Oh, that's the hardest question anyone's ever asked me. I love
that we just talked about what we talked about, and that's the question that has you totally tripped up.
Okay, I love Passover for the drama.
Okay.
Right, like we're dipping our fingers in wine to represent, like it's so dramatic. I love it.
It's very dramatic.
I love Purim because I don't think we celebrate enough.
Yep.
I'm a big Yom Kippur fan.
Many people have given me that answer before. That you are not the first. People like that one.
And I have an annual Sukkot camping trip with my friend, where we go to the North Shore every year, and which is very cold around Sukkot, I will say.
It is.
Lots of like 35-degree nights on a cold tent on freezing ground. So those are, I really just named 4, but those are.
No, that's okay. But for very different reasons though. I like that. I like that. And what is your favorite Jewish food?
I knew you were going to go there afterwards. Well. I think bagels, and I think salt bagels are the most Jewish of bagels. And that is because, first of all, they taste good. Second of all, they kind of cut your mouth. They like cut your cheeks as you eat them. Yeah. And the salt then stings, but it somehow makes it taste even better. And I think that is the drama, the suffering, the joy of the salty bagel. That's Judaism to me.
Oh, the salt bagels. I mean, love a salt bagel.
Love a salt bagel.
Love a salt bagel. And also just all the reasons I mean, it's so right though too.
Right?
Yeah.
Before I know you wanted to do the last questions, but I am interviewing myself again.
Please.
Please go to prochoiceminnesota.org/donate. We need your money. Everyone wants to volunteer, and we would love to have you volunteer. And also the best thing you can do right now is put your money into an organization like mine, where we've been, setting up for a post-Roe future, and we are prepared to keep fighting. And we really, really, we're member funded. We need your support to keep doing our work.
Well, I was actually going to ask you one more time where people can go, but you know what? That's totally fine. I'm totally superfluous to this conversation at this point.
Listen, I take charge.
and I am here for that. Absolutely. Naomi Silber, thank you again for joining us this week. And we certainly wish you the best, and please try to get some sleep and some self-care, stay hydrated, and keep up the good work. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network, a product of Jewfolk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.